Welcome to the Mona Beginner Crash Course. In this tutorial we will look at an introduction to Unity. First we will look at the windows and how to customize them. Then we will go over how to manipulate assets in the main scene viewport. After that we will go over some useful functions that help with the development process. And then we will look at some very common hotkeys. Let's jump in. If you haven't used a game engine before, they can be a bit much when you first open them. They can do a lot. But much like any application, what you see and what you actually use are quite different things. Unity has a bunch of windows and panels to affect everything you need to do with game design. That said, there are only a few that you will use all the time. The default layout might look like this. You can of course rearrange your environment as you see fit. You can do so by simply dragging your windows around to where you want to have them. I also hide the AI navigation panel by right-clicking on the tab at the top there and selecting Hide. If setting the project window to a small sliver like this, I can set it to one column layout at the top right of the window here. You can save your layout by going up to the top right button here and going to Save Layout, and then saving it under a different name or using the default to override it. The scene view is where your experience exists. This is what your space will look like. You will usually edit your assets around the scene using the position, rotate, and scale buttons found in the top left by default. You can also use hotkeys. We have Q for view, W for position, E for rotation, R for scale, T for the rect tool, and Y for the transform tool, which combines all the above. Basically the QWERTY keys on your keyboard. In the project window, you have all your assets for use in your scene and all the things Unity needs to function. The Mona template comes with a list of folders to place your assets in. This is not compulsory, however. If you have a folder structure you prefer, you can use that. The Mona Assets folder has many of the assets you may use to add to your space, such as portals, canvases, and artifacts. If you happen to delete any of these, then you can get them back from here. These assets will be introduced in future tutorials. The hierarchy window is where your assets in the scene will be organized. Mona requires a certain hierarchy to function, which we will go into more detail later, but the quick overview is that Mona Space requires 3 scenes that have already been loaded when opening the Mona SDK. The space, artifacts, and portal scenes are all required. In each scene, you will see a space, artifacts, and portals asset. This is also required. All of your assets need to be under, or a child of, these 3 assets. Otherwise, there will be issues making your Mona space work. The easiest way to test this is to collapse all of the assets, and you should have the following. The inspector window is where you'll be able to modify asset parameters. Different assets offer different elements, called components, to modify. It has a lot of information, depending on the asset type. We will go over these as they come up. The game window is usually not used in Mona, as you require a camera to use it. Apart from certain circumstances, you shouldn't have a camera in the Mona scene, otherwise it will override the user's camera in Mona, so we don't recommend using those, unless you have a specific reason to do so. Next up, we have the console window. This is usually used for programming and troubleshooting. Due to security concerns, Mona does not support custom code, but the console can help you troubleshoot your space if you have any issues. A common example is when you build your space to test, and no playable files are built or they are with 0 kilobytes in size. This is usually because the WebGL module was not added to Unity on installation, and this is displayed in the console in red. As an aside, you can easily fix this by jumping over to the Unity hub, going to the Installs tab on the left, select the settings button in the correct Unity version, and then add the WebGL module here. Errors that are in yellow can usually be ignored. Depending on what you plan to create, there are several other windows you may need that are not included in the default setup. The animation and animator windows are useful if you're looking at animating assets. These can be found under Window, Animation, at the top. The lighting window is also useful for general lighting, also known as light mapping, and can be found under Window, Rendering. The final recommended window would be the Package Manager, found under Window, Package Manager. This is used to import any extra assets Mona may use from the Unity registry or assets you purchased from the Unity Asset Store. That said, it is generally not recommended to use Asset Store assets as Mona does not support custom scripts and there are common issues that may arise with licensing and compatibility. Check the links below for more information. Don't forget to save your layout when you're happy with it, using the layout in the top right. With the layout set up as you like, we can look into navigating the viewport. You can left-click to select, hold left-click to use the selection box, which only selects assets that are enclosed in that box. Middle click will pan the scene. Alt and left click will orbit the currently focused asset, and right click will rotate the camera. There are a couple of ways to zoom. You can use the middle scroll, which is easiest. You can also use Alt right click and move the mouse left or right or up or down to zoom in and out. At the top right of the scene view, you have the gizmo to shift to different axes. If you click on the white square, you can shift between orthographic and perspective modes. In perspective mode, it is possible to use the WASD keys with the right click to fly around the space. Holding shift will let you fly faster. In orthographic mode, these keys will affect the clipping of the space, or how the camera cuts assets off, as you can see at the base of the viewport. To add an asset into the space, you can drag and drop it from the project window into the hierarchy or the scene itself. Make sure that all the assets are a child of the space, artifacts, or portal's game asset. Therefore, it is a good habit to drop assets into the hierarchy directly, as you have more control over their position in the hierarchy this way. Then move it around the space. At the top left here, we have the ability to control where the asset's transform is applied. The first option is based on whether it rotates from the object center or its pivot. And next we can define if it's based on the asset's local axes or the space's global axes. You can hide, show, or resize the gizmos in your space. You can do that at the top right of the scene window. Showing your assets in shaded wireframe and shaded wireframe modes is possible. This is very useful when navigating more complicated assets. Note that if you have any asset where the wireframe is nearly black, then you need to optimize the asset more. Polygon count is more important in a monospace as it runs in WebGL in a browser, so all assets must have very reasonable poly counts. For more information on this, go to the Monodoc linked below. As with any program, hotkeys are great for improving your development speed. Some of the most commonly used hotkeys include F will focus on the currently selected asset. Control will snap position, rotation, or scale. This allows you to snap by distance, angle, or scale. These amounts can be edited using the Edit menu Grid Snap settings. V offers a vertex selection. This allows you to position assets accurately based on vertices, which is fantastic for modular assets. And of course you have Control C, Control V, and Control D for copy, paste, and duplicate. So in this tutorial we looked at the most common window types in Unity, navigated the scene viewport, and some common hotkeys you may use. Next we will look at adding simple assets and materials in Unity. Thanks for watching, and happy building!